What's up, everybody? It's me again. Welcome back to the Indie Lit Forum. And today we're going to be talking about a book that, okay, to be honest, I haven't read this particular book in a little while. I wanted to reread it before I tried to do a review, but I keep coming across new books coming out that I want to do, and also I'm still reading for pleasures and work, so I'm just going off of what I remember, and honestly, I'm going to be talking in broad strokes anyway, and talking maybe kind of doing a little bit of a good chunk of the series, a little bit, just because I don't know if I'm going to have time to get around to doing all 12 books there are so far. I definitely want to do this one. And then the most recent book came out fairly recently, so I'm probably going to try to do that one here pretty soon. So, without further digression, today's book that we're talking about is Life in the North by Tao Wong, Book 1 in the System Apocalypse. Really interesting series. Really interesting series. We follow our protagonist, John Lee, through what is an apocalypse. The Earth is integrated into this galactic system, which is basically just a RPG system. And with that being said, this book right here is an example of really great lit RPG. The stat element is firmly interwoven into the entire story extremely well, and at the same time they're not too much of a distraction. They're interwoven in, but they don't break you away from the story on a constant basis. And by the later books, for the most, you don't really get a full character stat sheet until the end of the book. But at the end of the book, there's always a full character stat sheet. All the stats, all the skills explained out, the equipment, what the equipment does, and this really provides a lot of that meaty character stat goodness that fans of the genre really get into. I have a buddy that also reads these books, and he really gets into the minutia of each stat, each skill. What benefits the weapons and equipment really provide. And so I want to say this is one of the best examples I have run across of lit RPG. It does it extremely well, and at the same time, you can ignore a lot of those elements. Like, I never read the full stat sheet at the end of the book, really, especially in the later books. It's extremely long, and a lot of it's stuff you're kind of already familiar with. Maybe you go back and look up, a particular skill on there every now and then to try to remind yourself of what it does. But it's not really central to, or, well, in some ways it's essential to the story, but not in a way that, you have to read every little bit. But at the same time, the story itself presented here is extremely great because the ultimate antagonist of these books, I want to say, is the system itself. Like, it is, almost a prime example of the, thematic conflict idea of, person versus God. Because it is this omnipresent force that isn't really there's no real personality to it. It's unfeeling, uncaring. It's just a system. But at the same time, it is pretty much the prime antagonist of the books. It is, in many ways, what they're fighting, or many ways what John Lee is fighting against. Because that is what makes that character really interesting. And there's a bit from the first book, minor spoilers here, just throwing that out there. But there is a time where early on in the book, John Lee comes across this gigantic monster that there's no way he should be able to fight at his level. But at the same time, he still does, and he defeats it and takes out a lot of other things at the same time. And this, of course, radically advances his character, but also in the process, he buries the entire population of this village that had been sacked and killed in the oncoming apocalypse and earns himself the title Redeemer of the Dead. And that becomes the title most people, tend to refer to him to or as, because it is such of a fight against what is kind of the norm of the system, which is you just kind of accept the system, ride it, and you become really someone that is more in search of increasing their personal levels and increasing their personal power and kind of be damned to everything else kind of in between. Or that's kind of my take on it a little bit. And that is John Lee's character. Like, he's in so many ways, like, even when he is just fully immersed in trying to up his levels so that he can survive longer and do more, he's still constantly fighting that system, trying to make him, kind of almost inhuman. And, also fighting, just himself, kind of losing degrees of his humanity. And it just makes for a really interesting concept and a great story. Can't recommend this series enough. Uh, some other important characters that you're introduced to in the first book, Ali, uh, John's spirit companion, who is so frequently injects a degree of comedy to this story that I think is refreshing. Like, without the presence of Ali, I think sometimes the story would get a little too dark, a little too brooding, a little too just nah. And so Ali being there frequently gives you these kind of almost laugh out loud moments when he's just kind of screwing with John, like, hey, yeah, no, that's not actually a thing. I just made that up. I thought it would be funny, and it was. And then the other most important character introduced in the first book is Makoto. Probably one of my favorite characters, and one of the really great things about her is that she's such an interesting and kind of well developed character that frequently doesn't say anything. Like, she's a very kind of stoic, quiet personality, but at the same time, her character provides, I guess, just this, what, I, I mean, honestly, kind of a sense of heart to the story. Like, she is somebody that has so much taken away from her at the very beginning, and as she goes through, she just gets, she heals and she finds her place. I mean, her place is being probably one of the most violent murder machines in the story, but at the same time, like, her arc is about healing and finding something else and, devoting herself to that. And it's just really great how Talon does so much with this character without her really ever having a lot of spoken lines, or there's not much dialogue, and frequently it's just one or two phrases and a look, but still easily the second best character in the entire series, I think. And so, yeah, there's a lot to offer here. Uh, there's not really. I don't really need to give an explicit scene warning for this. I don't think. Like, I mean, there's some kind of fade to black moments, and there are some relationships, but really, they're not extremely well developed, in large part because of, just what's going on and what John Lee is trying to achieve kind of frequently makes it to where our protagonists can't develop these like real strong relationships. Like they're usually kind of fleeting things that as, time and events carry on kind of have to be, dropped, sadly. Like, because, I mean, there are some really kind of, interesting interactions there. I guess I should mention the character of Lana, although she doesn't play much of a part in the later books. She's very important in the kind of opening arc of the first 3 or 4 books, and is also a really interesting character, a really strong woman, and probably the best example of a character uh, going through everything that they're going through that does hold on to her humanity, because she's always there trying to help people, trying to do the right thing. And the counterbalance she provides to what frequently winds up happening to John in some cases, I think is, very relevant, very interesting, very important to the story, especially in the early books. And, she's still kind of obliquely mentioned here and there, you know, as the story kind of progresses, in some of the later books. Just, massive. I'm not going to get into that actually. I'm running a little bit long anyway, and I feel like I've kind of given some pretty good reasons for checking out this book. It's this book especially. Check out this book. If you don't like it, then okay. But honestly, try out this book if you're in any way into sci-fi and or lit RPG or just some really interesting and well-developed characters. Then give this one a try. I highly recommend it, and I think I'm going to end on that. Once again, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, then especially thank you for watching until the end. And if you like what I'm doing, like the video, subscribe to the channel. That haven't gotten one of those in a while, but we'll see what we can do. But thank you once again, and have a good day.